Okay, let's talk about hell. Y'all are probably familiar with this concept of hell, right? In your mind right now, you have a deep cave in the world that you see flickering firelight in. There's probably magma around in certain places. There's demons going around, and they are torturing the hell out of people, right? Right. Well, one way of looking at that is that if the devil is torturing people for having done wrong, isn't he still doing God's work? What? There's a lot of things to this, and I could take this off in about 10 different generations, and I'll try to stay on track here on this one, guys. But hell is not in the Bible. And so if you believe in that religion, it doesn't really have anything to do with it. Well, that's not true either. It definitely does. And people say, oh, the Bible adopted some pagan crap to go along with people to make everybody agree with it. And another way of saying that same statement is the Bible is a compilation of everybody's beliefs, and therefore I'm trying to get everybody to believe it. And where does this concept come from? Because the more you get into ancient belief systems of all these people that weren't necessarily the Bible, but surrounded the Bible, you see parts of it everywhere. Yeah, dying and resurrecting sun gods and all kinds of things, Christmas and where it comes from. And you see Christmas in the Sumerians, and then you see Christmas in the people that were the proto Europeans that ended up becoming the Europeans, and things like the Huns, which were called Germans, and the Germanic people, and they have a Christmas deal too, with these sacred trees and all of that situation, and druids and all these tales about it. But you think all that's gone and all that's lost. And in reality, that isn't the case. For if we were ever to refer to hell, then we would be referring to an ancient Norse mythology and these ancient people that heralded mankind in this certain way. And in their version of the mythology tale that gets taken in through Tuatha De Danann and the people that came in after the last ice age into an area that was covered up with ice before it melted away and ended up becoming the Europeans that everybody knows today. They were in quite different lands. In fact, up until quite recently, some of these people were in other places, like Samaria, like Tocharian, like some people listening to this today that are in Europe. Just 10 generations ago, those people were in China. I know it sounds hard to believe, and if I was to tell you that, like I said many times now, if I just went out, came out and told you the way everything goes, people wouldn't believe it. So I have to go through this thing of Scythians and da 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 and everything, and okay, how that works, and try to fit the puzzle back together for you as I keep going around and around making a web, and hopefully this clicks in on people and then they start making connections. And if you've been watching my videos, hopefully the way this is working is every couple of videos here it keeps clicking in a whole nother gear of the concept, and after you look at it a while, you're like, this is an Anacathera device and this shouldn't exist, but it's reality. And what the hell is going on here? Well, it's reality. It's what's going on versus what you're kind of led to believe going on. It's a little different thing going on. So let's look at hell and where it comes from and the concept. And you might see, oh, let's just say parallels to beliefs you already currently still hold. So how far off were those druids and all of those people? How much did we keep of it? In Norse mythology, Hel is a being who presides over a realm of the same name, where she receives a portion of the dead. Hel is attested in the Poetic Edda compiled in the 13th century from an earlier traditional source the prose Edda, written in the 13th century by Snorri Sturluson. In addition, she is mentioned in the poems recorded in Heimskringla. Pardon me if you know how to actually speak this language much better than me. Egil's saga, that date from the 9th to 10th century, respectively. And I could go into each one of those and stuff, but I'm not the scholar of this stuff. So, an episode of Latin work, Gesta Danorum, and has to do with the Danides, the tribe of Dan, written in the 12th century by Saxo Grammaticus, and this has to do with the Saxons and Isaacsons and the Isaac and Kurgan burials of the early Proto-Europeans, is generally considered to refer to hell. So all of these episodes are talking about these different ones of these different people refer to hell, and hell may appear on various migration period bracteates. So let's look at the migration period here, see if I can get it to pull up good. And so we can see there's a whole lot of migrating going on. If you look at that green line, you see that Huns, that actually ends up being 3/4 of what we call Germanic people. And there's Visigoths and different things, and the Anglo-Saxons that we see up top there in the gold. There's a lot of going on. Doesn't look like you kind of thought it was. And these people went here and these people went there, and it looks like a lot of people went over here. Doesn't it? So let me break through a little of this just for a second. This being presides over a realm of the same name. Now, we know that also there's this, they'll be imprisoned in Tartarus. And you say, well, what is Tartarus? And who are the Tartars and all this type of thing? Well, if you look at old maps, you'll find that Tartaria is Spain, and this area we were just shown in that picture right there. But also Tartaria is a giant realm that was over there in Proto-Indo-European lands. Isn't that funny? Well, imagine whenever they came over with all these cattle and this crap and met with the early Europeans that were already here, that the Basques are still related to. But they have Rh negative, so whenever they have kids, it's a rejective thing. There's a whole deal about that. I'm not going to go into that. But whenever they came over, apparently, maybe some diseases and things went on and so on. And so this might have more to do with the tale. Now, I've quite often thought that this is a tale of a young girl that was a princess that got sent over here, and it looks like the Tuatha De Danann situation. And that daughter, when she came, died, and she ended up being deified for all time as the goddess that will be there waiting for every one of them to make it to the other side, and she would escort them through. There were people that were sacrificed literally on the idea of doing this at certain times. That they actually would be schooled in a way and then killed, knowing that whenever they go to the afterlife, they're supposed to go ask God for these things and help us out. And quite often some of these sacrifices you heard about were done in this guise. That the idea was, yeah, you're going to die in this way, but whenever you die, then you can go to heaven. When you go to heaven or hell, you're supposed to ask for these things. Try to help us out. Help us out. In the poetic Edda, prose Edda, and Heimskringla, Hel is referred to as a daughter of Loki. In the prose Edda book Gylfaginning, Hel is described as having been appointed by the god Odin as the ruler of the realm of the same name, located in Niflheim. And if you know about that, you know the layers they have of it, and the snakes wrapped around the bottom of it, and that's all over the place. And this idea of a snake wrapping around the world, and an omphalos, and a concept, and everything, and yeah, because it kind of all comes from the same point and breeds out of it, variations on a theme. In the same source, her appearance is described as half blue and half flesh-colored, and further as having a gloomy, downcast appearance. And maybe this could be something where she died, who knows? Maybe she fell in water and drowned and turned blue. There's all these ideas that could come out of the concept that you get of that, or got frozen in some way. The prose Edda deals that her hell rules over vast mansions with many servants in her underworld realm and plays a key role in the attempted resurrection of the god Balder. Huh. That sounds conspicuous there too. Well, there's a lot to that in the resurrection tale of Balder and stuff like that. And it has connotations that go with a lot of these religious stories too. And so this resurrection concept, everybody thinks, oh, Jesus is the only person ever supposedly resurrected. And it's like, no, that goes to a lot of people. And an idea of resurrection into an afterlife or so on. Jesus is supposed to show up and go, look, it can happen. You know? Of course, we picked that apart quite a bit too, but scholarly theories have been proposed about hell's potential connections to figures appearing in the 11th century Old English Gospel of Nicodemus, an Old Norse Bartholomew's Saga Pistola. And when I was a kid, I saw the Secret of Nim, and it was where they had taken and genetically messed with rats, and they got this drug that was supposed to help people become smarter, and rats got it, and the next thing you know, they were real smart, and they lived in the garden and do all these things, and there was Nicodemus and all these ideas, and I was like, that sounds like an old name from something. And I go looking it up, and I'm like, what? Yeah, and then tracking it down. So all these little things, you know, when I was growing up, kept showing up my face. I listened to an old Pink Floyd album and talking, this is about pics, so it's kind of, but not really, about this. But, you know, they were extremely tattooed or pictured up people. But at the same time, there's a song, and it's a stupid little thing that Pink Floyd got on synthesizers and messed with and made up, and it's called A Gathering of Small, what is it? A gathering of small furry animals gathered in a cave, grooving with a pict. And it's all these noises and stuff, and it ends up making a beat kind of weird thing, and then this weird music comes over the back, and then all of a sudden you hear an old Scottish guy just going off. And to most of us, it'd sound like Shrek or Get in My Belly guy, and he's all like, oh, it's wearing me down, deader than my feet can get. And all this weird stuff, you know. And I remember being kids, we were listening to it just laughing, like, what the hell was that? And we were around it back and stuff like that. But then grooving with a pict, you know. And so what's that got to do with it? And what's this got to do with it? And I don't know, led down a lot of rabbit holes. But she may have been considered a goddess with potential Indo-European parallels in Bhavani, Kali, and Mahakali, or hell may have become a being only as a late personification of the location of the same name. So like there's hell, and then she's over it, so it gets the name. And it's like, no, it gets the name. And where does the name Helen come from? And what was Helen of Troy about? And who are the Hellenes? And what the hell is going on here? Well, I'm trying to show you. I'm trying to help you out. If I told it to you straight and I didn't show it to you, you wouldn't have any knowledge to help you out in the first place. Old Norse feminine proper noun, hell, is identical to the name and location over which she rules. Old Norse hell. And you see, because rebirth comes through a mother and a mother figure, there's a mother of hell. And you can see that in Sumerian and all these other places. But you don't really think of hell. It's got a devil in it, but he ain't got no wife. But you heard the story when you were a kid, when it was raining, when the sun was out, the devil was beating his wife. But that's supposed to be happening up in heaven. Does that make any sense to you? Because he's beating his wife and she's crying, so it's raining or something like that, right? Well, who's the devil's wife? What the hell goes on? Does God have a wife? What the hell is going on here? The word cognates in all branches of the Germanic languages, but which is just a form of Proto-Indo-European. Oh, just a second. if we look at the Indo-European parallels, you'll see that sun disk, the chariot, the horse, the whole 9 yards, their mythology, Proto-Indo-European language, blah, 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 blah. I've done one about that sun disk that gets pulled around. Interestingly, there's little circles that are all around on that thing, and it correlates to a moon cycle. It's like a calendar, like they're coming in with a big calendar wheel, and the same type of thing with the big wheels they come into, of the sun god, they come into India with, and that has to do with a chariot, and who brought horses everywhere, and you can see it actually come with it, you know. So, where the hell were we? Branches of Germanic languages, including Old English, Hell, Old English, Hell, and thus Modern English, Hell, Old Frisian, Hell, Old Saxon, Hell yeah, Hell yeah, Old High German, Hella, that you see on people wearing a fez cap on their head in the Shriners and the Hella Shriners, and the Gothic Halya. All forms ultimately derived from the reconstructed Proto-Germanic feminine noun Zalho or Halyo, and this takes it to a Proto-Indo-European linguistics and breakdown. In turn, the Proto-Germanic form derives from the O-grade form, and I don't want to go, it's how vowels and things change, and sing, sang, sung, song. Proto-Indo-European roots. What's Proto-Indo-European roots? This is pi, what we call it. We're no longer long to say the word Aryan because of the things that went on and the dogma that came after World War II, so we call them Proto-Indo-Europeans. But then we try to lock them down to this one time and one thing. Well, look at what they did in all of these times. They are Gobekli Tepe. They are this. They are that. They herald civilization, China, India, all around. They're part of what makes up the Egyptians. They're the biblical people with the same story. Same story. The Proto-Indo-European root, kel or kol, is to cover, conceal, or save. And the Egyptians used kol around their eyes to cover. The term etymologically referred to modern English hall, and therefore Valhalla. An afterlife, hall of the slain in Norse mythology, the great hall of the mountain king. Hall and its numerous Germanic cognates derived from Proto-Germanic hallow, covered place, or hall, from the Proto-Indo-European hall. And so there are even Christmas songs and the Great Hall of the Mountain King, and if you've ever heard it, and da 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 da, and all these songs and stuff, and Fight of the Valkyries, and all these things that go along with it that are still there, that were taken much later, and people still knew all this shit. For there was a time not too long ago where people knew all of it. In a modern PC world, we're told to, no, 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 you can't be like you were the ones. It's like, what? Why would you destroy somebody? Oh, now that's not cool. Now who's doing that? Related early Germanic terms and concepts include Proto-Germanic, Halyaruno, a feminine compound noun, and Yala Witjan, a neutral compound noun. Now this is runes and witches, but hold on. This form of reconstructed the Latinized Gothic plural noun Hellerune, attested by Jordanes, according to philosophers William Orell, meaning witches. Old English Helleruna is a sorceress or a necromancer. What's a necromancer? He deals with the undead and the dead. He's a protector, and whenever you look at him and you play him, that's a cleric. Necromancer. Female's version is a sorceress. Or sorcerer, but a sorcerer isn't a necromancer. According to Orwell, Old High German Helleruna is magic, and the compound's composed of two elements, Halio and Runo, the Proto-Germanic precursor to the modern English rune. The second element in the Gothic Halleruna may, however, instead be an agent noun from the verb renon, and if you, to run or to go, which might make its literal meaning one who travels to the netherworld. You ever listening to old Fleetwood Mac and Rhiannon, and how she is a sorceress goddess thing? It's this whole gypsy kind of, and what that actually relates to. Proto-Germanic Jalhawitjan, or Hell's Witch, is reconstructed from Old Norse Helvete Hell, Old English Helle White, Hell Torment, or Hell, Old Saxon Hell Witte Hell, Wati, and the Middle High German feminine noun Hella Wise. And wise means white, like Weiss, but also wise has to do with wisdom, and then that has to do with wizards. The compound is of Zalo, discussed above, and Witjan, reconstructed from forms of such Old English as wit, right hand, and wits. Old Saxon gowit as understanding, Gothic unwitte is foolishness, understanding. You get your wits about you. Some of this has got to be ringing some bells here, without me breaking into it like I try to do so much. Poetic Edda. The Poetic Edda, compiled in the 13th century from earlier sources, features various poems that mention hell. In the Poetic Edda poem Valspuna, Hell's realm is referred to as halls of hell. In stanza of Grimsall, hell is listed as living beneath one of three roots growing from the world tree Yggdrasil, of a triad of roots. In Fafnir Small, a hero Sigurd stands before the mortally wounded body of the dragon Fafnir and states that Fafnir lies in places where hell can take him. Man, I could go off right now on Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and the snake and the serpent. In Alchemy, the phrases hell has half of us and sent off to hell are used in reference to death, though it could be a reference to the location and not the being, if not both. We use that to go to hell. What are you telling somebody to do? Well, you're telling somebody to die, but you're also saying that you don't think they're a good person and they're not going to go to heaven, right? What if in some sources heaven is hell? What? Well, sometimes hell, like Hades, wasn't a bad place, and it's really hooked up to like Elysian Fields and all this situation you heard about. What's Elysian Fields? This is like the Garden of Eden, or the fields of the Egyptians that they go to, that they have all their crops and things like that, or the Elysian Fields of these early Proto-European farmers that they all have out there with their fields. But we all understand it under our own guise, don't we? And that was done by design. Isn't that special? I think it is. I think it's more special than the biblical narrative that we currently have shows to be, especially if you know all the stuff that goes along with it. It could be a reference to the location, not a being, if not both. In stanza 4 of Balsmir Drumar, Odin rides towards the high hall of hell. Why would it be high? Hold on a second. It's supposed to be a lower hall of hell, and they go down into hell. What's hell? Well, hell's where you go when you die. It's the goddess of death, and she escorts you into the afterlife. Well, that doesn't sound like hell. Well, that's not the hell that you made up. You've taken this idea of Gehenna, where children were thrown into this fire and burned alive, and there's gnashing of teeth, and then that would be the hell that you would have to go to if things were wrong. You wouldn't go to the heaven. Something like that would happen to you. See how there's a twist right there, how that works? Hell may also alluded to Heimosmal, death. Ham, Eosmal. Death is paraphrased by joy of the troll woman, or ogress, and ostensibly is hell being referred to as the troll woman or the ogre, Flego, although it may otherwise be unspecified as dis. Dis is getting known in like dispater. And dispater goes with Dios pater. And who's Dios pater? Pater is father. Dios is God's father. What? Oh yeah, Jupiter, God's father. See how it all works? And there's Uranus and Jupiter has Zeus and stuff, and Zeus is the thing. See, still the same thing. Same thing. Ogres, King Og, giant people, stuff like that come out of this land and everything. And what's an ogre? Oh, well, stories are told about ogres. Here's one for you guys. I'm just going to sling in here that I could probably do a whole video on, and then the reveal or something. But looks like whenever they would go with these other people, whenever they interjected into those people, that they made this mythology thing to where even who they used to be were the bad guys in some cases, and profess that the people that were there were the good guys. And they're the good guys now, and they're talking shit about who they used to be in a mythology about how everything worked out. And I can give you a couple examples of that, but we're just going to go on. Just let that roll around for a second. Hell is referred to in the Prosa Edda, written in the 13th century by Snorri Sturluson in chapter 34 of book Gylfaginning. And that has Gylf and Elf and the Gylflings and so on. And then Faginig. A fag is not what you think of nowadays, but a fag is actually a bundle of wheat or a grain, but it also can be a bundle of sticks, and those fags or faggot were used to burn witches alive and things like that. So there's a different thing. Hell is listed by Hai as one of the three children of Loki, and Angrboda, the wolf Fenrir, the serpent Yogamander, that's coiled around, and Hel. Hai continues that once the gods found that these three children are being brought up in the land of Jotunheim, and when the gods traced prophecies from these siblings, great mischief and disaster would arise for them. Then the gods expected a lot of trouble from the three children, partially due to the nature of the mother of the children, yet worse so due to the nature of their father. Now you can get a little picture in your mind here of these people that are, let's see here real quick. You have these people that are migrating and stuff and going down, and they've got these things, and they're capturing the serpent concept and stuff, and they've got children with them and 3 kids and stuff, and knowing when they go on this quest, this shit's gonna probably go wrong eventually, but things will go right for it. And this little daughter right here, this little girl, that's hell. What? That's hell. Sacred virgin, young of age, people, blonde, long hair and everything. What's going on here? What's this right here he's got? That's a dog. That's the hellhound. Well, it's a wolf and Fafnir and all. Yeah, Breathe in and out. Let's continue. Hai says that Odin sent the gods to gather the children and bring them to him. Let me see if I can get this right again. Upon their arrival, Odin threw Jurgamander into that deep sea that lies round all lands. Now, we look at the ancient Sumerian thing, and it showed lands, and there's the deep sea that lands all around it. And there's the snake creature, and the yam, the sea creature, and the serpent, and everything, and the creature of the abyss. All that just keeps going on, doesn't it? Just there it is again. Odin threw Hel into Niflheim and bestowed upon her authority over 9 worlds, that she must administer board and lodging to those sent to her, and that it is those who die of sickness or old age. High details that in this realm Hel has great mansions with extremely high walls and immense gates, and a hall called Eljunor, a dish called Hunger, and a knife called Famine, and the servant Galgati, Old Norse lazy walker. This is somebody who doesn't. This is the one mythology look at it. This is the grasshopper who, not like the ants, didn't do the things and keep for the winter concept. And if you take that into the idea of these people that do grain work and saving and making it through the winter and everything, you get a different idea of this. But the serving maid Gangalot, also lazy walker, the entrance threshold stumbling block, and the bed is a sick bed, and the curtains are a gleaming bale. High describes Hel as half black and half flesh colored, adding that this makes her easily recognizable, and furthermore that Hel is rather downcast and fierce looking. And then the little girl, well, what the hell, that's not really fierce looking and everything. Oh, things can change, little girls can grow up and things can happen, but half black and half flesh colored, and they say they burned her as a witch, and when she died, her bottom half was burned up and her top half was not. Whenever I first read this when I was a kid, I watched Star Trek and stuff. We just recently saw the thing about Spock and the symbolism and how that works off of ancient Jewish beliefs. But in another way, there was a video that they did there where they were trying to make, a racial kind of idea. And they had guys there that were half black and half white. Y'all remember this? Enigma looking weird guys, and there's 2 of them, and they were going after each other, and they tried to help mediate it. And what was weird about it is after a while they finally stopped them all, and they go, "Look at you, you're both the same, why are you getting invited?" And he goes, "Can't you see? His left half is black, mine is right," and stuff, and it's made to be like, dun 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 dun. But there's a lot more to that than, I'm not going to get into race and everything now, and the people that brought civilization and primitives and things like that, and the differences of the two, and who were the Egyptians and all that stuff. But let's just go. In chapter 49, High describes the events surrounding the death of the god Balder, the goddess Frigg, and Frey, which has to do with Friday. Ask who are among the Aesir who will earn all of her love and favor by riding to Hel, the location, to try to find Balder and offer Hel herself a ransom. This is a mimicry of the idea of Dumuzi and Inanna, and whenever you go to Hel, and she picked him back and then came back with him, and this ends up being the spring rites, done in a different way. Changed over time. The god Hermor volunteers and sets off upon the 8-legged horse Sleipnir to Hel. 2-horse chariot. It's got 8 horses to it. 2 horsepower. It's pulling much faster. Hermor arrives in Hel's hall, finds his brother Baldur there, and stays the night. The next morning, Hermodor begs for Hel to allow Baldur to ride home with him, and tells her about the great weeping of Aesir to be done upon Baldur's death. Hel says the love people have for Baldur that Hermodor has claimed must be tested, stating, "If all things in the world, alive or dead, weep for him, then he will be allowed to return to the world," or the Aesir. "If anyone speaks against him or refuses to cry, then he'll remain in hell." This is the idea where we've got to get everybody on the Jesus thing, and then what happens? Well, then the end of the world comes, and an asteroid destroys us all after learning all this neat stuff and almost being spaceman. What? Well, that's the kind of dream people are in nowadays in this death cult thing that's really not about that. It's about a rebirth situation, i.e., Jesus. Armageddon's already happened. Definitely. Harmageddo. The Greek form of that is Armageddon. The Greeks wrote that shit. It's something that already happened a long time ago. 73 AD. Exactly on the date Jesus said, to the day. Got to get out of this death cult idea because it's about life and the cherishment of it. It's got the death thing into it because we all die. And you might live this long, but you're dead forever. Well, here's one for you. Do you remember before you were born what it was like? Because a lot of people believe that after you die, it'll be the same thing. And you're not going through all this crap for some kind of bullshit that da-da-da. That's supposed to be morals for the earth and the way we're living here. Later in the chapter, after the female Joltin Pak refuses to weep for the dead Baldir, she responds in a verse ending with, "Let hell hold what she has." So there's this one guy that screwed it all up. Or right then would have been Ragnarok and the whole thing and everything, but man, you gotta weep for Jesus. In chapter 51, Hai described the events of Ragnarok and details that when Loki arrives in the field of Vigor, all of Hell's people will arrive with him. And this is all coming back from the dead, and all the people and the dead will rise, and da-da-da, and all you hear these things. And, well, that sounds like undead and zombies. That sounds like a zombie apocalypse. It sounds like a bunch of weird things. Chapter 5 of the Prose Edda, Scottus Palmal, Hell is mentioned as a kinning for Baldir. Kinning is a figure of speech in the type of circumlocution, a compound that employs figurative language in a place of a more concrete single pronoun word. Kinnings are strongly associated with Old Norse, Icelandic, and it's kind of a kitschy little word here for it and everything. Hell's companion. In chapter 16, Hell's relative or father is giving as a kinning for Loki. In chapter 50, Hel is referred to join the company of quite monstrous wolf's sister. The skaldic poem Ragnarsprapa, or however you pronounce that. In Heimskringla, the Yinglingla, Shivalinga? Written in the 13th century by Snorri Sturluson, Hel is referred to through her, never by her name. And the king Dagvi dies of sickness. A poem in the 9th century, Ynglingatal, forms in the basis of Ynglinga saga and then quotes the described Hel's taking of Dagvi. I doubt not, but Dagvi's chorus, Hel does hold to whore with him, for Ulf's Sib, a scion of kings, by right should caress in death, to love lured Loki's sister, Yngvi's heir, over all of Sweden. I'm not going to comment on it. In chapter 45, Section Lingual gives the refers to Hel as house warder, house, a bowl barrow, a type of burial mound or tumulus. What? Sacred burial mound of earth is used to cover a tomb. The bowl barrow gets its name from its resemblance to an upturned bowl. Related terms include cairn, circle, cairn ring, how, curb, cairn. I think we know that. Well, yeah, you got Proto-Indo-European burials in those little mounds and stuff too. In fact, there are tells that are around all over the place that other people built upon long after. Meaning guardian of graves. In chapter 46, King Einstein Haffelson dies by being knocked overboard by a sail yard. A section from Yngla follows describing that Einstein fared to Hel, referred to as Blister's brother and daughter, In chapter 47, the deceased Einstein's son, King Halfdan, dies of an illness. An excerpt provided in the chapter describes his fate thereafter, a portion of which references Hel, Loki's child, from the life summoned to her thing, the third liege sword, when Halfdan of Holtar farm let the life allotted to him. Sounds kind of like a tale that goes a little bit along with, but strangely different than the story of Jacob and Esau, those Caucasian twins. There's always a brother saga too in each one of these things and stuff like that. And so in the account of Baldur's death, Sacro Grammaticus, early 13th century work, in Gesta Danorum, the Danides, Dan, Tuatha Danon, the dying Baldur has a dream visitation from Proserpina. Ooh, and I've done a video about Proserpina and the goddess of death. And this, so you look here at this Greek thing here. Let's see if I can get in on this. You gonna let me show it? And so if you look at Proserpina, she's this little girl. And this whole thing's around there. And what's a bull got to do with it? Persephone is Proserpina, Demeter, goddess of grain and agriculture. So this is where that Hartha comes from and all of this situation. And I guess I'll put out the Proserpina one now because I've been holding on to it when I start doing this type of mythology, because here's a connection to Norse everything. Well, no, this is these guys that went through the whole area. Well, there was this Greeks and Romans that have that. Yeah, And who are the Hellenes? The following night, the goddess of death appeared to him in a dream, standing at his side, and declared that in 3 days' time she would clasp in his arms in no idle aversion, for after 3 days the acute pain of his injury wrought his end. 3 days. And on the third day he will rise to the great hall of the mountain king. The great warrior will go to Valhalla. He will ride across the great rainbow bridge promise created by God. Did any of this sound familiar at all? It's been suggested that several imitation medallions and bracelets of the migration period, 1st centuries AD, feature depictions of Hel. In particular, the bracelets 1K and 14K depict a rider traveling down a slope and coming upon a female being holding a scepter or a staff. The downward slope may indicate that the rider is either traveling downwards, the realm of the dead, or that the woman in the scepter may be a female ruler of that realm, corresponding to Hel, or acting like, come on down. Some B-class bracelets showing 3 godly figures, 3, have been interpreted as depicting Baldur's death. The best known of these is the Foxy bracelet. 2 figures are understood to be Baldur and Odin, while both Loki and Hel have been proposed as candidates for that third figure. If it is Hel, she is presumed greeting the dying Baldur as he comes to the realm, and this is the triad that goes on there. See Hel, the Old English Gospel of Nicodemus that's here. Man, we're about to hit 45. Preserved in manuscripts 11th century, contains a female figure referred to as Seo Hel, who engages in the flighting with Satan and tells him to leave her dwelling. Old English Ut Mean. Regarding Seo Hel, the Old English Gospel and she cast him out of hell. Oh my God. Michael Bell states that her vivid personification in a dramatically excellent scene suggests that her grand gender is more than grammatical. It invites comparison with the Old Norse underworld goddess Hel and Frau Halle of German folklore, which is the same Hel and doesn't look like a hell creature to me. To say nothing of the underworld goddess and other classes yet adds the possibility that these genders are merely grammatical and strengthened by the fact that